It's on.
Yay! Hi.
Hello.
My name is Ruby.
And I'm Nathan. And we're back.
After Sciencing is back.
Yeah.
After vacation.
Mm-hmm.
It took a little longer to come back than anticipated, but we're back. I think we're gonna try and bring back the weekly scheduled science chats.
Yeah.
Nadira can't join us because she's in the throes of writing a grant.
Yeah. So what we were because we never really talked officially about it, but basically we ended up going on a hiatus for a bit just because all of us were extremely busy with things. Yeah.
Holiday break.
And
then the semester is decided to teach a class.
Yeah.
And it's spring break now, and so we're like, wait, we actually have time? What? So we're bringing it back while we can. And I thought a fun one to bring it back was to talk about actual social media, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to do science communication on social media. And just like last week, there was a scheduled building-wide internet outage on purpose for upgrading the internet and whatever. And I guess I just didn't read the email, and half the people in my lab also didn't read the email, and we were just in the the throes of science, and then suddenly come 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or something, everything stopped. Science ground to a halt. My entire lab just hung out together, and we're should we wait for this to come back? How long is it gonna take to come back? Should we just go home? I think I texted you that day.
Yeah. Wait, so because people can look up protocols and stuff.
Not just protocols, emails, things around transferring between servers, I code online. I use Jupyter Notebook. You can't run Jupyter Notebook without internet.
Yeah.
Just
so
everything.
Just let's just go home.
Yeah. So half the lab went home, but we actually just hung out and chatted, and I was just are we so connected and reliant on the internet that everything is just shut down?
That you can't do science.
Yeah, we literally couldn't do science. We couldn't. I was reading papers. That's what I was doing. I was reading papers, and I was trying to open the supplement. And
where did you get the papers even?
Yeah, no, it was already open because I was in the middle of reading the paper, and I was just I want to read the supplement. So click the supplement, and then it was PDF not found, and then I was why is it not opening the goddamn paper? And I was go. Yeah. And it was the internet was down.
And I think it's interesting. The internet was originally designed basically for scientists. So
yeah, and it's been used for so many more things than just science.
Yeah. But it's that that was it kind of makes sense that scientists can't do anything without the internet. Considering
That's true. It's we built.
It was something that was built specifically to solve a problem that we had.
Yep. And we basically don't function without it. But we thought it would be a nice topic to bring up, since we're coming in 2024. We wanted to talk about how scientists use the internet and use social media, and how it's different than everyone else using using the internet, and where it gets blurry, and that mixed space in between, which is actually where we're doing right now. Where I feel we're confidently in the blurred, mixed professional and not professional, social and not social space. That is,
because it's because it's for anyone who doesn't know the whole backstory. Basically, we're all working scientists in different, very specific fields of neuroscience. So Nadira does more functional imaging. I do neurotechnology, and Ruby does sensory studies. But then we also just talk about science in general, which I think is it's something we'll come back to, because one of the things we were talking about is sometimes when people speculate outside of their area, it's not
it could be quite problematic. And actually this was prompted because some tea was spilled earlier this week. In an article, which I
by New York Magazine.
Okay, NewYorkMagazine.com. About one of I guess a fellow neuroscientist.
I like the amount of shade in which you say that. Yeah.
Who is actually quite famous and a really big, high profile podcasting neuroscientist. Neuroscientist.
Neuroscientist.
He's a real neuroscientist. No, I give him credit for so the episodes I usually try to listen to, I go and listen to the neuroscience episodes about sensory
This
systems.
is Andrew Huberman, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when he has guests on, he is actually a very good host. Like he lets he asks intelligent questions and he gives the opportunity for those guests to answer, and like the guests are generally fairly good scientists. And
hi, everybody. Welcome
hey,
back.
welcome back. Sorry.
I will,
so long.
yeah. Also, I'll refrain from roasting Andrew Huberman while we talk about this. But anyway, continue.
I was saying, like, generally when he has other scientist guests in the room, he chose a line really well. Like, he's really good about, at least in sensory neuroscientists, he's really good about not speculating and like doing any of the things that I think we're going to talk about later. Until like the commercial comes on, and it's like really jarring to go from like really intelligent, like thoughtful, like nuanced science, like communicating, and then it's suddenly like protein powder, buy this protein powder, or buy this whatever, and I'm just like, what just happened? And he converted, like he just like code switched into like just like
being a weird person who sells protein supplements.
Yeah, or just like supplements in general. Like I take these supplements every day, and like sells and he's just selling. He just converted into like car salesman. And I always thought it was like kind of weird and problematic. Yeah. And Nadira, Nate, and I have talked about how we don't really want to take advertisements and like because we were worried about the influence of like money, like if we were funded by I don't know, Kellogg's cornflakes, and then we're suddenly you're like, yes, you should have
cornflakes. They'll make you not want to have sex.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but exactly. Yeah. Like if we were funded by cornflakes, and then suddenly we start peddling the cornflakes, like, do you believe anything about the science about cornflakes that we're going to tell you? Do you know what I mean? Like it's a conflict of interest.
But just so for context, so this article was called Andrew Huberman's Mechanisms of Control. And I think one of the things, like, I think most of us didn't like that much about it was, like, it was a lot about his kind of personal life. Like, kind of the main point of, like, that the article made was, like, that he did a lot. But, like, and I think we all kind of wished that, like, it talked more about
the science. Yeah. Because I could care less. I mean, it's not a great thing to be, like, dating around, but like that's his personal life. I don't really care. I think that's like the least of the harm. Like he harms individual, like those 5 women or however many women. He's individually harming those people in his immediate circle. What I'm really worried about is how much reach he has and how much harm he makes for all the people that watch and listen to him on podcasts. Because he could be saying things like don't get the flu shot and things like eat this pollution powder and don't go to your doctor when there's like a weird mole on you, like or like don't put sunscreen on, like things like that. Like he literally said, I'm just like, who is this man? Like why would you, to the masses, you have this platform, you should, it's like what's the Spider-Man quote, like with
great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, he is completely, like his great power is like he has this platform and people believe him and listen to him because he has a PhD and he's a neuroscientist, and then there he goes like peddling his supplements and then like giving poor advice in fields that he shouldn't be, and like not nuanced answer. And that's the I think one of the faults of just scientists in general. Like we're not really good at reaching out to non-scientists, and like the non-scientist community just basically experience science in school, which is like textbooks with facts. And in real life, I think, and from what we experience of science, is that nothing is really super set in stone until it's been tested many times. Like we really rarely make these like, yes, absolutely sure, especially like biology. Like I never say 100% anything. I'll be like, 99% of the time this is true. Like there is an off chance that it won't be true. And he doesn't make those, like he doesn't do that. Because but like that also helps get it across to the public. So that's scary, right? Like
I don't know. I mean, like I have like, so I was gonna say actually, so in this article it did have this one piece that I thought was really interesting. It's mentioned kind of the start and they say kind of also yeah, I don't know Michael Gervais.
Yeah, but we do know Jordan Peterson. And
yeah,
we aren't huge fans.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jordan Peterson is actually quite interesting because I think they're quite similar in that like he is actually a pretty decent personality psychologist, and that kind of like he was on Quora, which is a website that I hang out, and he has some like pretty good answers about kind of like personality psychology and like individual differences on there, but then he also just like talks about a bunch of weird like misogyny basically. Anyway, but yeah, okay, so I was going back to this article. One of the things that's that's mentioned early in the article is there's this point that they made. His podcast is revelatory largely because it does not condescend, which has not been the way of public health information in our time. And I thought this was actually like a really interesting point, and kind of like I think like what they're like kind of what they're pointing to there is that kind of like what he talks about is like in this podcast is there's a lot of speculation. Like he is kind of like talking about things, and he's talking about the mechanisms of this, and he's saying like, okay, this could be plausible. I think like the interesting thing about that is I think that actually kind of maps a lot to like how we talk about things with other scientists too.
That's true. And, like on the day-to-day, we'll be like, wouldn't that be cool if that's how that worked?
Right.
And I was like, does that work like that? Maybe. Let's try it. Let's do, let's figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, and I think honestly, like to me, I kind of like I understand why that is appealing. Like I mean part of it is because kind of like it feels like you're learning stuff, and kind of the implication is kind of that you are smart enough to like think about things and understand them, which I think is very powerful. And I think that's good because like it can engage people maybe in ways that you wouldn't engage them if kind of you're like, okay, we're only going to like do this in a more conventional way where we talk about these things that are very proven.
Yeah, that's true. He does tackle things that are new, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are pros to this, right? Like mm-hmm. He is talking to people who are working on these questions actively right now, and like mm-hmm. he asks them to speculate, which is quite interesting. Like because it kind of like tells you like which direction would you take your science next? Mm-hmm. Like what are the next questions that are interesting, or like where would you like like what are the tools that are available to ask these questions? Like those are interesting questions to ask people who are experts in the field now. Like that's the kind of questions we ask people after talks, right? Like mm-hmm. when we invite speakers to the university, we like after the talk, like we ask questions. And I was like, what do you think happens to this? Like what's next? Like he does bring that vibe to the public, which is really cool. Like you get access to really cool scientists, and you can like kind of pick their brains basically. Yeah. Like I don't see anyone else doing that. I mean, okay, before this, there used to be podcasts run by Stanford, actually, run by graduate students who used to basically pick the brains of their weekly neuroscience seminar speakers, and they would bring them on campus, or sorry, like before their talks or after their talks, the students will come in and like talk to the speaker, and then they would create a podcast, and they'll be like, how did you get into science? Like what kind of questions were you interested in back then? And then how did you like follow your career path? Like what did you do? And I love those podcasts, were run by grad students, kind of like, so like during their like lunch hour when they got to meet the speakers. Like Andrew Huberman does that a little bit. Like he basically kind of took over that podcast. And then, really? I think, I mean, the graduate student version of it no longer exists at Stanford. So, and also like the platform it used to be on is gone. So it is leaving Google Podcasts very soon. Mm-hmm. Like it's Google is losing it. This is a side thing. The Google Podcast is going away, so you should transfer things you want to listen to in the future. So anyway, I used to listen to that a lot, and like it was really inspirational to like hear about the stories behind all these really cool scientists. Like that's really cool that he has this platform that he can share, these all really cool scientists to the public, and not just to the nerds. And I guess the thing that I'm thinking about this is like that kind of
I mean, I don't know. I think there's a trap in saying kind of like if we're too rigid about saying like, okay, science communication should be done this way.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some unmet needs for that. Like, okay, like there's a couple things that I wonder about. One is kind of like, okay, like with my scientist friends, I'm like, I mean, I will be like, hey, does intermittent fasting slow down aging? And I'll be like,
Probably.
I think it probably does. And I mean, honestly, this is something that happens also because like I work in sleep and memory research, and like people really want to know like if there's ways to prevent dementia. And I think honestly, like
Reasonable.
when I'm like in a one-on-one conversation, if someone says like, hey, I'm at high risk for dementia, like are there things that I should do to prevent it? Like I will say like you should like get a lot of aerobic exercise. And I'll say like we don't actually know that like we do not have 100% proof that will stop you from getting dementia, but it's like it's good for you, like it's not going to hurt you, and there's a good chance that it will help anyway. But I think
But also you're not benefiting from it too, right? Like you're not pedaling running shoes
I don't know,
simultaneously.
yeah, but
trying-
I guess kind of like if I felt really strongly about this, like what if like you can have kind of like reverse conflict of interest though, I think, where you can be like, I think senolytics are really important for making people healthy and no one is like actually distributing them. So I'm gonna start a company that sells senolytics,
That's
right?
true, that's true.
Or just, I mean, yeah, I think like and that's where it gets hazy. But I guess kind of the thing is like, is it unfair kind of that I would give that advice to a friend,
But
or
not
like
to the
yeah,
internet,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Oh, that's true. That is a murky.
yeah.
That is a little bit murkier.
Because it does seem like sometimes like what public health people will say is like they'll say like we don't have any proven therapies that can
Yeah.
prevent dementia.
Yeah, you
And-
basically end up not getting any good advice
Yeah.
or like no advice because they're so careful about not getting sued for telling
yeah,
someone
yeah.
the wrong thing. That is true. I suppose we should always just have a disclaimer. Anything we say,
I mean,
should
and
always be like, yeah.
comes back. Like I think one thing that you were talking about is kind of I think one thing that maybe Huberman doesn't do, but that like maybe we should be doing is talk about those things, but then just be more explicit about what is known and what is not known.
Yeah, like I think there's opportunity to like encourage critical thinking, and like people like that. I think there's a space for that. Like it's fun. For example, if we pulled a paper and like showed you like a graph and then told you like, you know, this graph, you know, this bar in this histogram represents this population of people. Like if we broke it down simply and then be like, hey, like look, this is what they're saying. The bars on this part is higher than the bars on this part, and this means this many percent, and this means this many percent. That's what they're trying to tell you. And I was just like, do you also agree? Like that's fun. Like that's what we do at journal clubs for work all the time. And I think there's room. Like people go online and debate, you know, the color of this dress for like there's like lots of internet about the color of this dress, and we could just be like, hey, like this is how, you know, we can. I think if we made it simple, where it's approachable and it's a simple question, and we picked interesting topics, and like small amounts of data, bite-sized amounts of data, we can get people, we can like convert everyone to science, to become scientists. Maybe not full-time scientists, but like scientists, just like occasionally, like on daily like decision making. Of levels of scientists. I don't know if that's like a too high bar. Some people are like, we don't care.
I mean,
just
honestly,
tell us which one to take.
I mean, honestly, like I think like I think the fact like and the article talks about this, and also you just see this. I think it's really interesting that kind of like a lot of these things that are quite popular, like Jordan Peterson's show, and this one is that like I feel like if people think that it's relevant to their lives, they're actually really happy to like listen to some dude talk about like G protein coupled receptors and like social hierarchies for like 2 hours. Like
that's the amazing part. I feel like that is one of the like pros of this. His podcasts are long. They're like 2 hours long. There's a 45-minute interview with like with a guest speaker, but like that's still an hour and 15 minutes that he films.
Yeah.
And he holds the interest of like I don't think I listen to podcasts that are 2 hours long ever. Like mine are usually like 45 minutes to an hour. Like this man has a hunger and he's holding people's attention for this entire time. Like that is a skill. Like
and honestly, I think like a big part of it is that like people feel like it oh yeah, so Better says like part of it is just kind of like you can't help but run into these people. And yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think another part, like I think a big part is also like do people feel that it's like relevant to their lives? Like I think it's kind of interesting that like all these people who get really popular are mostly like ones who are doing some sort of like self-optimization stuff. Yeah.
Well, the other problem is that we can't be experts at everything, right? Like on one hand, I would happily go watch a video with like a chemist that, you know, made formulations of lotions and I like, you know, have her explain how like sunscreen works and all the different kinds of sunscreen. But like, you know, even if you're like the best science communicator, that like they're probably really good at telling us about sunscreen and like nothing else. Like there's only so many videos and podcasts about sunscreen I want to listen to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like then you like, you know, switch over to like, I don't know, foot creams and then they're no longer the expert, right? And then like that's you have to strike a balance between having enough expertise to like talk about your topic and then also be broad enough so that people are interested to come back every week. Because do you know what I mean? Like that's the problem. Like you can do really high quality episodes. I feel like we do fairly high quality episodes neuroscience wise, but like whenever we talk about physics and space, I'm just like we are on the edge of like we don't know how to talk about this, right? Like, and it's fair, and I feel like we try to give disclaimers saying like we are not physicists, we do not study astronomy. We're like, but here's the history of like the wow signal. And I don't know, like it's a constant balancing act, and it's moving. Like how social media like is being used, and like this line is constantly blurring.
I do think also like that's the difference. Like I was saying, kind of like okay, a lot of these conversations are like similar to like how scientists talk to each other. And I think honestly, I think that's one difference between like the like I think kind of often what you see in these podcasts is like that people are less willing to kind of talk about the uncertainties and what they know.
And I feel like there's also like within the scientific community, there's like an unspoken like it's not good to be like if you're a serious scientist, you shouldn't be like wasting your time talking to non-scientists. You should be in the lab working. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like it's like it's not explicit. It's like kind of subtle, and like if you notice like there aren't a lot of people at our stage of science that are doing super like high amounts of social outreach, science outreach. Or there are people who are teaching who choose to do this really well. And they do it way better than us. Like I have to say we are sloppy social media science outreachers because we're not regular, we don't post things properly. We're not great at, you know, constantly like playing the social media game. We're quite terrible at the social media game. But like we recognize that like that's a skill that
it's interesting because like I actually don't get that
you
bias.
don't get that?
No, because I'm at the media lab, so we're so like the lab that I'm in is like it has this kind of odd funding arrangement where you have a consortium of companies that fund it, and the consequence of that is that we're constantly talking to people from the companies about our research. So like
different.
So but it's interesting. Like I mean, like I get tired of it. I'm just like, wow, I'm spending all my time just making presentations. Like, and maybe that is like, I mean, maybe that is that bias. Like I'm just like, I should be spending more
so
time.
maybe it's where the money comes from. right? So like for me, the money comes from like grants, like government grants, so massive government grants, and they expect papers. They're like, we gave you money, you should be doing science. Convert the money into data, and then data into like science. And yours, the money is coming from these companies. And they're
which is like that's a very unusual way of doing it. Too,
but it's science is science, right? Like for us, like where the money comes from, that just pays the bills. Like we theoretically are trying to follow the questions. But we wanted to talk about we kind of strayed. I wanted to talk about how scientists use the internet versus how we also use the internet when we're not doing science. Or I guess like everyone else knows the internet as. And I want to talk about like how like the pros and cons of them. Okay, so the pros of science, of social media in science, for example, like how scientists use it for us, for example, like Twitter is like current what it used to be. I guess it's not Twitter anymore. It's X. Sorry.
M.
I don't remember the
like
number.
From us.
I don't know. Sorry. Like it used to be kind of like a yellow pages. Like I would just follow labs and scientists who run their labs, and they would just post about papers when their lab dropped. And like half these scientists I would have met before, like at a conference, or like I'll read their papers and I really like them and I'll follow them. And then when they publish their next paper, they're like, hey, like our paper dropped. Here's a quick summary of what it is. And like, you know, when I'm scrolling and I'm sat on the toilet, I'll just be like, oh, like cool, they dropped a new paper. Like I'll go read that, and I'll like click the link and then like paste it in my to read later list, and then I'll sometimes get to it and read it later. And I think that's a really nice way to use social media for science. When it's I guess like the correct way, the way that they thought when we created ResearchGate, I think that's what it was supposed to be. But if you notice, ResearchGate is quite, I would say, unpopular, less popular, like less fast. It is still used, but it's out of date. Like if you go to someone's like ResearchGate profile, it'll be like from their previous institution. They'll have an outdated email. They'll have photos from
like I'm not actually
like
sure what ResearchGate is supposed to be used for. I just use it to get like PDFs of things that are paywall.
Like old papers basically. But yeah, it's supposed to be like the Facebook and Twitter of science. And it clearly did not work. And I think it just has to be a platform where it's like highly maintained and a lot of people are using it. And that happens like a pro of that is for using something like Twitter is that it had the backing and it had a lot of people on it already and it had an infrastructure. I'm not really sure what the plan is for the majority of the science community. I think
Blue Sky,
but like, see, you have to like convert. Like it took, I want to say like a good 3 years to convince my old PI to be like, we need to be on Twitter. We need a website that is not ancient, and you need faces on the website and like emails, like bare minimum publications emails, like faces. And he's just like, oh, why do we need this? Like our publications stand on its own. And I was like, people don't read publications like they did in your era when you could like pull out, like, you know, get your weekly journals and then read every single paper in the journal of that week. I don't think that happens anymore.
No.
That's not how we consume science anymore. And so like we need to update it and change. So I think those are pros. Do you want to tell some cons of using science like this?
I don't know. I think it's mostly good.
It's
like,
that part is mostly good. I think the not good part is like when there's like things that are not science that bleeds into it. So things like politics, because we're people, we're not we don't like pick. We don't only talk about science. We'll talk about politics, and we'll talk about, you know, the bridge that got run over by a boat in Baltimore this past year. Like we'll talk about like regular things, and then when we talk about other things, like it could like damage your scientific reputations. Like kind of like how our podcaster we talked about earlier, I was like, well, we should concentrate on the issues of the science that he's talking about, that he like, misrepresents. But on the internet, it's all about his like affairs with women, and we're like, he didn't separate it, and like the internet can run away with that. And then like you get a troll, and then it just goes. You get what's it called? Like the algorithm will amplify the trolls. It'll amplify anything that's like argumentative, and it just feels like it could get really toxic really fast. You can get into like Twitter wars about non-issues, because if this other scientist was in your face in person, they would be really nice about being like, hey, like, I don't agree with this. Like, can we design an experiment to fix it? Like, it could easily go into you're wrong, you're really wrong, and you're wrong because like your person is wrong and not your science is wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, you can lose that in the interwebs, and that's quite nuanced. I think that's
Although I mean, like you were saying, like okay, it can like hurt people's scientific reputation. I mean, I'm not sure that's necessarily bad though. I mean, like, so like if you have a PI and you look at, and this was actually something that kind of happened at Northwestern. Actually, there was someone who got fired basically for like racist Twitter posts. And like, I mean, like if you have someone and you like look at their like Twitter and you're like, wow, this person is kind of racist, like that is like good information.
That's true.
Like and you can think about like, oh, how maybe like you can think about like, oh, is this affecting their scientific decision making?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
Yeah.
I feel like when we were students, like when you were applying for grad school, did you not clean up your social media accounts before you applied to grad school?
I think a little bit.
Yeah. Like that's like a process. Like we had like in our minds, we knew that we were being judged by our social media presence, right? Like I don't know, like I didn't have a lot of things to hide, but like maybe not like all my Halloween costumes. You know what I mean? Like I don't want the world to see like 12-year-old Ruby. Like I kind of just like distanced it. It was not a bad. There's nothing horrible. You can dig into it. It's fine.
You don't have skeletons.
No, but like I think in grad school I was just like, okay, I'm a serious scientist now. Let me make like a LinkedIn profile. Right. Let me make like a ResearchGate profile. Let me make, and I actively used my Twitter account as a scientist, which means I basically don't post anything except, oh, my paper dropped. Oh I'm at this conference now. Come find my poster. Like that's how I use my social media professionally. And I don't really go across, like I almost use a different account, or I don't use Twitter at all for like, I don't know, following Broadway musicals. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a separate thing. Like when I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to enjoy like that movie or whatever, I use it because it's like, this is the science version of me, the professional version of me. And I don't know if that's probably a good thing, but that's just how I guess I decided to draw the line. But not everyone does that. Like some people just blur it completely. They have one account and one account only, and then it's just all the things.
I think it's like also more senior people where either like they don't care or they don't know how to set up more than one account.
Maybe like that is probably definitely happening. And then they get fired because they realize that maybe I shouldn't have been so racist on Twitter and raging about whatever news that just happened.
I do think like I think an interesting thing also about like science and social media is also like not just like how not just like how scientists necessarily use it, but also like there's now all these science forums and kind of communities and stuff that exist. And so for example, like I've actually been pretty active in like, so I helped run the like DIY brain stimulation community for a while. And there's one on nootropics or kind of enhancing drugs. And I think these are really interesting places because it's like, it's often like people who have like specific like health concerns who are using that. I think it kind of comes back to this thing that we were talking about earlier about like, oh, like like people really want like to use science in ways that are helpful for themselves.
like apply it.
Uh-huh.
One of my favorite things to do to use the internet,
Mhm.
ways to use the internet
Mhm.
recently is actually to use AI to find papers.
Mhm.
Like so previously to this, I would just go on Google Scholar or in PubMed, and I would like put in search terms and like Boolean things, like the way we were taught in libraries, like
Mhm.
back when we were in college, it was like use ands,
Mhm.
like top like subject and like you know, and like different versions of that to like find and search things like librarians taught, like the like I learned from the librarians, and now I can just go in and like just write like full sentences. It was like find me all the papers that will say this and have this keyword and like these things, and we would do a deep search, and like 6 minutes later I would have like this many percent match, and I could find things. I think it's helping, because I think that was the problem. Like the internet was like there wasn't a list of like the best, you know, sources of podcasts that would tell you about, you know, infections of
Mhm.
like fungal infections on the skin. But now you can do a deep search and find all the podcasts about, you know, fungal infections on the skin. And like
Why do you want podcasts specifically though?
no,
Or-
podcasts or papers or whatever.
Right.
Well, I bring podcasts up because like that was the issue, right? Like you have these experts in like, you know, sunscreen, you have an expert in this, and like maybe they only have 2 episodes that are like really worth listening to, and then the rest are not. Like maybe that's how we can find them now, because we have these like
Yeah.
like because of the new deep way we can like deeply search the
Mhm.
internet, or they just don't exist, which I think is actually really valid too. And it's like, has someone done this experiment before?
It's
Like,
just no.
no, yeah. And instead of having to read like 40 papers, I'll just be like, okay, if someone has done this experiment, these keywords are definitely going to be in the results section. I'm going to like put them all in together and be like, okay, I hope no one's done this before. And then
Yeah.
like look for it. Like, that's the thing.
I will say so. Like, so we had a lab meeting where we were talking about uses of ways we could use AI in our research, and one person was like, "Oh yeah, you can use it to like look up like what like you put in like what you want to use, and it can like find like psychological scales that measure that thing, which is really useful. Except that sometimes it just makes up its own psychological scales.
Yeah.
Like, it'll just be
and
like
hallucinate
right,
like
it'll
a fake
just
thing.
be like it'll like I recommend using the Bissell Happiness Index, and then you look that up more, and it turns out it's not a thing.
It's
It
not a
just
thing.
made it up.
Yeah.
But then like you can then, although it turns out that like if you like ask it to like give like the questions on the Bissell like happiness index, it is actually like perfectly happy to make up its own like psychometric instruments.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part, right? Like if I mean the nice thing about the way I was using or I've been using it is that it finds actual papers
Yeah,
that
yeah.
were written by actual humans.
I don't know. I mean, I do think it's kind of cool. Like, I was working on this experiment, and like, I tried to get it to give me this like relationship quality like questionnaire, and like, it came up with like a pretty good one. Like, it was based on like this theoretical framework of like what makes for a good relationship, and it was based on the framework. But like, I looked it up, and I was just like, oh, the AI just invented it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, on the other hand, it is quite disconcerting that we couldn't tell that the AI made it up immediately. You have to look it up,
Yeah,
right? Like if you read those questions, you would have been like, yeah, you know, like
Like,
people
it
would
did a
ask
good
that to
job,
evaluate
but-
if this is
yeah.
a good relationship or not. Like,
Yeah.
it's like
And
you
it
know,
like came up with like a scoring key. It's like these ones are
Yeah.
reverse score.
yeah, it's like deep faking, like you know, actual protocols that people sat down and like thought deeply about. That is quite
I
scary.
will say like a really wild thing that some people are starting to look into with AI is actually kind of, can you use the AI to basically replace people in certain kinds of human subjects experiments? And it turns out kind of like you can actually you can do simulations where basically kind of like you have a simulation and you just kind of like ask ChatGPT how this person would behave, and actually in many cases it's very good at predicting human behavior, and you see the same kinds of like cognitive biases and kind of even the same learning processes. So kind of you ask it to simulate like people learning things if you ask these simulated people to make judgments about like the acceptability of like using some new technology or something,
they'll still make the same.
yeah, so you can kind of get, or not even mistakes. They just like kind of like, I think one thing that we did in our lab was we asked actual people kind of how they felt about using this new wearable, and then we also like asked simulated people, and we actually had them fill out the same scales, and like basically they correlated a lot, which kind of makes sense because ChatGPT is fundamentally a model of output that people produce.
Yeah. So are they? Would you say that they're like an average version? Like, because like in like, would they have the same variance? Like, if you redone it every single time, would it display the same amount of variance, or would it just be like the middlest norm, like the normest norm?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't know actually. I do think that like, so kind of if you prompt it and kind of you give your simulated people different characteristics, then you will get variance. So I think kind of like if you give it, you might have to like explicitly tell it, like give each person like a biography that is statistically representative, but I think you could get variance.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That is a cool use of the internet. Like, can't do that without internet.
Yeah. We also, it turns out they're pretty good at critiquing experimental designs now too.
Oh, really? I feel like someday, well, fairly soon actually, we could just feed in like bullet lists of like questions or like our grants and be like, hey, what are the chances that this is gonna get funded? Put it in and it'll be like, yeah, this is gonna get funded 50% of the time. And I'm like, all right, we can do better. Like, actually 50% is really good actually.
Yeah. But you're like
it's like, yeah, let's write some like winning AI graded homework.
Yeah. I will say like this is an interesting thing. Like one of the things that AI is really bad at is coming up with grant ideas. Like it generates like the most boring grants. Like
I do have to say it's really poor at writing when you know what you want to say. If you've already written what you want to say, it can make it sound nicer. But like oftentimes if you give it a block of text that you already wrote and you're like, they can do it better than I can, it doesn't know it changes the meaning. Like the word choices we made are not for style. It was for meaning, and they go for style over meaning. Like I think that's the problem. It goes style over substance. Which is it'll get better, right? Someday. Maybe we should train. It should be trained on these large language models. Could be trained on successful grants and only successful grants. Are we getting lots of activity? Oh, it's just out of butter. Feels YouTube literally drowns you out.
Oh yeah, So I think you mentioned that too. Like you were like that was some of the things that you know. One of the things you mentioned has kind of like things like how these algorithms can amplify loud voices, but not necessarily the most accurate.
Yeah, and sometimes the loudest voices aren't the most correct voices, and and like, you know, I think it's trying to amplify people when they're having conversations, right? Or like things that are like when people are arguing about things. Those are conversations. And amplifying those is not necessarily wrong, but inherently it will get like people with the most outlandish, crazy things would get the loudest argument, and then so those would get like louder. And we could see that happen during like every election cycle. The people with the craziest things would get the strongest responses, and then those would get like viral, the viral treatment. And like it would get amplified everywhere and end up on the news, and you're like, like the majority of us would not say that.
So kind of what do you think like in an ideal like internet science communication, like how, what's the best way to do it? What should we be doing?
Yeah, I think it actually has to be small. I think I don't think there should be large, like huge, massive platforms. I actually think, I mean, I really personally enjoy going into classrooms for like elementary school and things like that, like where you get like 60 kids and like hopefully you make a difference for those 60 kids in the week. I think that's kind of like our goal. We're gonna get the kids that use Twitch. We're gonna get like the 5 kids and like probably our parents and our friends. They're also on here. But like I felt like we're going for quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And I think that is the way to go. Unfortunately, that we do. Like I have no ambitions to become like a massive
Andrew Huberman.
level podcaster. No, absolutely not. I think that's too much. I think we can do what we can just like on the side when we have time. And I think that's the best we can do. But we should keep doing it.
Yeah.
And that's why we're back after a hiatus of like 4 months. Because we felt like it was important to like reach out and like, get to the kids that do have questions. And we love questions. I think having different perspectives like challenge us frequently is really good for our science.
Yeah, I think that is one thing also we were talking about just like with ourselves was kind of like I think there's a really big difference also between like when kind of you have a thing that's a conversation between two co-hosts and like a podcast that's kind of like a monologue. I think
a prepared monologue you can read at the.
I mean, I think it's kind of if you have something that's a conversation between two people who like know kind of like approximately the same amount about it. It's like I think kind of we were talking about that like expressing uncertainty, and I think that happens more naturally.
Yeah, I think it's easier to go into something we both don't know if we have someone there.
Also, like. There's just the natural social incentive of like, okay, we're live and like I don't want to get off the podcast and have her be like, what the hell? Why did you tell everyone to eat placentas? Like we're not friends anymore.
Well, I mean, I guess there's no conflict of interest there. No one is selling placentas.
I mean, actually, if you want to buy, so like hit me up off. No, that sounds gross.
You get some strange mail.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure it would be illegal to mail placentas. Actually,
yeah, I think it is, especially across state lines. I think it's definitely illegal. I do know that like most bodily fluids is illegal to mail, and actually to sell at all. You can only donate. Like even like breast milk, it's in the same category. There's like black market for breast milk because you're not supposed to.
Anyway, don't eat placentas. There's no reason to, and I don't think they taste good.
Nate's a vegetarian, by the way. Anyway, that being said, if you guys want to have us discuss a topic of interest to you, feel free to put it in either in the Twitter or on the comments and on Twitch, and I think we're also on YouTube now.
And on we're not on Blue Sky yet, but yeah.
And I will get around to putting us on Spotify again.
Sounds good.
Just like a little bit behind.
Anything else you want?
Just like let's talk about social media and I thought this would be kind of fun way to end it. Like how would you rank like all the different kinds of social media, like in terms of like most professional to like least professional? I thought that would be fun because I think we will order it differently actually.
And I think the most professional is like LinkedIn.
Yeah. I think it's actually, I think that's what people actually, like governments actually agree with you.
Yeah.
For example, like China will let you have an LinkedIn account because it's like, this is your professional presence on the interwebs.
I would go.
But okay, I have issues with LinkedIn. You can write whatever the heck you want on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like there's no checks or balance on it.
But like isn't that true of most of the internet?
I know, but like I can go on LinkedIn, like this is like allegedly the most professional website to like social media presence, and I could be like I am the president of blank company and no one would know.
Yeah.
Who would check me?
I mean that's why people all write these shitty articles on it about like, oh yes, I bought a potted plant and my productivity went up 300%. And then like 20 people are like, ah, yes, amazing life hack.
Yeah, but also like I think LinkedIn on one hand it is nice because I feel like I use it to find emails.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that is
definitely.
like a professional way to find an email. Because if I wanted to email someone professionally, sometimes the website of the company they work for, the university they're at, doesn't have their like university email. And I will go on LinkedIn and be like, which email should I be emailing? Like I'm sure, like emailing Facebook.com, whatever version is not the correct email to be emailing people.
I would say like LinkedIn at the top, and
Okay.
then like
Where's on the other
and
end?
then also like personal websites, and then like Twitter, and then like I don't know. I think like Tumblr would be like under Twitter.
Tumblr?
Yeah.
Is the immediate one under Twitter?
Yeah. And then probably like probably like Reddit is with Tumblr.
In the
then,
same
like,
level as
yeah.
Tumblr. Hold on,
And
I'm
then,
gonna
like-
come up with a list
And
right
then like
here.
4chan.
Okay, 4chan.
Yeah. Like you just said to like rank
Yeah.
social
For you.
media by professionalism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a list of social media platforms so that we can like list them for. Okay, where would you put Instagram?
Like a little like around where Reddit is, but like for science stuff, like much lower because all the like science advice on Instagram is very bad.
Okay. Oh, what about YouTube?
It very depends on the YouTuber.
It depends on the
But,
YouTuber,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
WhatsApp. That's like texting, right?
It does have channels.
Oh, does it have channels?
Yeah. I haven't used them. I think they're like pretty bad. Like I think like Telegram also has channels, and like all the science advice on there is like terrible.
Snapchat
Yeah, also probably not
on the bottom.
Yeah.
Facebook
Yeah, definitely bad.
on the bottom, right?
Uh-huh.
Like Facebook, Snapchat,
Mhm.
all of those like more social than professional.
Yeah.
Pinterest.
I don't know.
You're like, I don't
Yeah.
use Pinterest. Yeah. I mean, if you guys agree, or if you want to put your lists on there for people to discuss, this is the time. And I guess no judgments on what your order is. But yeah, I didn't think LinkedIn would be that high for me.
It is.
In my brain, it was just kind of this like obligatory website that we're supposed to make when you graduate from college. And if you're like too lazy to make a personal website, like on GitHub or something. Oh, actually, GitHub. How professional? How like where would you put that?
Yeah, that's pretty professional.
That's pretty professional, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you put your like pet projects on there that are not for work?
Oh yeah, I do.
You do.
Yeah.
But it's still professional.
Yeah.
That's fair. It's like
I mean,
personal code.
I think in like a lot of tech jobs, that's like actually a thing that people look at is
like when you're trying to get the job.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's fair. It's like this is your productivity.
Yeah.
At your previous job.
and also just like independent projects.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I use Twitter and LinkedIn the most to like find people, especially if I like met them briefly at a conference and I'll just remember like the title of their paper. Like I will totally go and stalk them, find their paper, find their name, institution, and then go match it on not Instagram. Oh my god,
LinkedIn.
From LinkedIn, and then find their email or actually Twitter. And I'll DM them in Twitter and be like, hey, like we met this talk. Like, how did you do this experiment again? Like, what exactly did you do? That's really cool. Yeah, that's a cool way.
Yeah,
to
I think
use
people mostly hit me up on Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah.
You get like, and also like people that we've never met before too, right? Not just at conferences. Like you'll meet people that blind like emails basically,
Yep.
but like DM, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty common. That's a pretty common way to get a job. Like I cold emailed my boss and then I was like, "Hi, you're taking postdocs?" Yeah, and I'll do that with people that write papers too. I'll be like, "Hey, you were the first author of this paper.
Just
You know."
like, hey, your paper's cool.
Yeah, no. Mostly it was just like, "How did you do this part? It didn't work for me. Explain, help."
And do they often get back to you?
Almost every time. I think, especially if you reach out to the first author. I feel like the last author, sometimes they're like, who cares? But like the person that's actually on the ground doing the experiments, the first author usually will email back to you.
Yeah.
Like I would email back if you were like ask me questions about my paper in person. Like, right?
Yes.
I would tell you how I did it, right? They're like, oh, hey, you didn't mention like where you procured this particular strain of mouse, and I'll be like, oh yeah, we made it. If you want to go ask my boss, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
we're like, where, like, what is the exact concentration of this virus you used? And I'll be like, yeah, bought it from here. That's it's here. Sorry, we didn't write it in the paper. Absolutely, I will tell you.
I'm kind of amazed that people have time to do that, actually.
To reply.
Yeah.
It's actually so infrequent. It's not that frequent. Like, it probably happens like once a month, or not once a month, once every 6-ish months or so.
Okay.
So I get like 2 emails or 2 a year. I would reply those 2 emails. It's not that bad. You would help some random person in the lab next door if they like just came by and be like, hey, can I get like this much of, some reagents, right?
Yeah, but like I don't know, like I'm just like, I feel like I try to, but like also just like I get a lot of emails which is like, why is my REM detection not working? Just like I don't know, like just,
I can't help.
I don't have the mental space.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Maybe you have harder questions. People ask you harder questions. Mine have been fairly
straight, like you're just like, oh, I know this.
Yeah. It's pretty innocuous.
Yeah.
Like half the time I don't even have to pull up my paper, or I don't have to pull up data. I'll just be like, I know this off the top of my head. I can find it for you. Like, I'll just like go find it on the internet. I was like, here, buy this thing. It works best.
That's true. People are like, oh, what kind of speaker do you use? So like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, which is the best one? Because like in the papers, we'll just be like, we've used the speaker. Like, we wouldn't tell you the exact, we'll tell you the model, but we wouldn't tell you like, model 3.1 that's no longer being made or sold anywhere. So like, we'll just tell you like,
I think the problem is like, getting all the questions are like, why is my Fitbit not working? Like for this experiment, and I'm just like, that is a question for Fitbits. So,
yeah. Not me. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say, open source things have this issue, right? Because they'll use really specific things and it works, and then they're like, all right, paper's published, we're out.
Yeah.
And then new people using it or trying to use it will like, I feel like if you publish those papers, they would come at you and be like, you wrote this thing and it doesn't work no more, help.
And like the maintenance is like, of it can be like very time consuming, because like often just like operating systems change and then it kind of breaks everything. And
versions of even like the software, like versions of things in Python could change. Anyway, we have ran out of time. Thank you so much for coming. Until next time.
We'll see you next week.
Next week Thursday
for a show. Yes.